morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us. Another episode of Catching Up with Jacob. And he is on the other side of the Atlantic, and he is on the other side of enemy lines. He's in California, southern that is, not too far from my house. Jacob Prash. How you doing, Jacob?
Well, I'm okay, but you, I, and James are within an hour's drive of each other, and we still refuse to meet in the same room. This is the only way to keep the peace.
Must tell us something, right? Now, welcome, Jacob. And you had a good meetings up in Wisconsin, and you got some stuff on the East Coast coming up. But you're here this weekend, here in SoCal, here in
We
Devore.
shall be in Devore. The first session begins tomorrow at what, 11 a.m., yes?
10 a.m.
10 a.m., oh boy.
10 a.m. Be sure you be there.
I will be there with bells on.
And then Sunday, you're back at 10:30 for our Sunday service. So
yes.
Hanging out with Jacob, not only catching up with Jacob, hanging out with Jacob over the weekend. So, and Jay's going to be there too. So if you want to, just rub shoulders with the movers and shakers on Moriel TV, you can come and meet us there. Jay, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well. It was good to have the clandestine parachute drop of Jacob a couple days ago into California.
All right.
And hopefully we'll get some. Hopefully we can encourage some people this weekend and always, especially during this broadcast.
That's right. And Jacob will be a great help being here, physically here. And we got some things we're going to talk about. Actually, tomorrow we're going to be talking about with Jacob. We're going to be on preparing for persecution. It's a very touchy subject for a lot of people who don't want to talk about it. Some people think they're going to get raptured this weekend. And but we believe that according to Scripture, the end is not yet. That's what Jesus says. The end is not yet, and we have to see more signs that are coming upon the earth before the Lord comes. We believe the Lord is coming before his great wrath. That's no doubt. But it's not the way that some people make it out to be. I think we have to stick to Scripture more than anything else. So we'll talk about that. And on Sunday, we'll talk about Luke chapter 21. Luke chapter 21. So wonderful subjects. And we always give Jacob the hard subjects, right? We should give him an easy one.
Yeah.
All kidding aside. Davey from Down Under, how you doing this morning? It's Saturday.
You're doing pretty good, thanks. Good to be here again.
Amen. So when Jacob's speaking on Saturday, it'll be a Sunday for you guys in Australia and New Zealand. So don't let me confuse you guys. It is Saturday here, Sunday over there. And I've made that mistake more times than not. So welcome, Davey. And I know David's on a plane, so David will be here soon on a plane to some. I think he's landed already. Sorry, he did land already. So, we'll be good to go. Jacob, do you have any announcements before we get started? I think you wanted to say something about next year.
A couple of very brief announcements, 3 to be precise. One, next year we are planning a Moriel conference in the USA. Whether it will follow the same kind of format and forums that we have in Britain, in Scotland and England, or whether it'll be something different, we're not sure yet. We're still very much seeking the Lord about it, but we'd ask you to be praying about it. What is almost for certain is that it will be concerned with prophecy and the close of the age. At least that it'll be epicentered around that, most likely. But we're still seeking the Lord, and we're asking people to pray. Should we do 1? Should we do maybe 3 in the United States with the same theme? Outside speakers from outside of Moriel, residential or non-residential? These are all questions that we have to ponder. So please pray as we consider these things. Secondly, the UK conference in November 17th to 19th. We are completely sold out. We said we would close bookings, or we were told we had to close bookings by the conference host by the 1st of October, but the rooms have all gone. Beryl is trying to negotiate, trying to plead to get some more. If we get some more, we will announce it. But as it is, we can't take anyone else. But we're still trying. That's just the way it is. It just filled up faster. Well, we thought it would fill up, but it happened faster than we thought it would. Thirdly, given the nature of the politics of reality concerning social media, while we are on a variety of platforms, we would remind people, Moriel has its own servers on Moriel.tv, MorielTV.org. We have our own servers, our own platforms. We cannot be shut down by YouTube or by anybody else. We are also on Rumble, which is more tolerant than some of the other platforms. We would urge people, if you're watching us on YouTube, we would urge you to watch us on Moriel TV, either Moriel.tv or MorielTV.org. Also, we're available on Rumble, and we have a lot of our material is on RTN. So we have alternatives. They can't stop us. They can't control us at present. They may shut us down. They may give us strikes, but we have to be in a situation where we don't need them, and we are. So you don't need them either. Watch us on our own servers or watch us on Rumble. If you're able to do so, please do so.
All right, Jacob, and that's absolutely true. We're on different platforms, and including Vimeo and Telegram, and as well as the ones Jacob mentioned. But Rumble's growing, Moriel.tv, MorielTV.org. Good choices to have. So you have plenty of choices. So we prefer you guys to go to those, and we appreciate that, to just keep not only Moriel off of censorship, but keep these messages free flowing and to God's people's ears, and also to unbelievers that can benefit from that. We also have smaller clips. I know the Catching Up with Jacob's a longer video, but we have smaller clips that you can share. And we also have podcasts. And I don't have the schedule for podcast. Jay, do you have it? And just to remind everyone, perhaps not the individual episodes as we talked about, but the actual platforms where you can find Jacob on podcast.
Absolutely. So we're still waiting for the podcast schedule, but you can find us on Amazon Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Podchasers, and anywhere really a podcast can be found. So make yourself available to download and listen whenever you'd like.
Amen. Well, thank you so much, Jay. Thank you so much, Davey and Jacob. Let's get started and let's catch up. Jacob, we won't be talking in depth about Mitt Romney, and he's not going to run for re-election. A career politician. He's good riddance, no love lost. Any comments on that?
I just wonder who the Democrats in Utah are going to get to replace him.
I'm wondering if Nancy Pelosi could get the same memo that Mitt got.
Yeah.
Only wish. I can only wish. And we won't be talking about, well, we'll talk about the society's downfall and what's going on there. But Jacob, you and I watch these non-binary polymerous videos of parents raising non-binary. It is, and then women who are coming out as lesbians, leaving their husbands and having a goodbye video. I mean, it's social.
People want to do that. They will be accountable for their own sin. They want to be that. I don't really care. Don't flaunt it, but if that's what you want to do, that go ahead. What Jesus told Judas, go do it quickly. Let he who was filthy be filthy still. Jesus actually said that. Let he who was going to be filthy still. My problem is what they're doing to the children. Better a millstone tied around their neck and they'd be cast into the sea than what they're doing to these kids.
Yeah. And obviously it's a great concern, because this is society's thinking, not everybody, but it's society's thinking, and it's a Romans 1 scenario, which we'll be talking about it at the and Backstage.
But the medium, the government, and the academic establishments are on their side.
That's right. That's right. But let's talk about this, Jacob. Surprise, surprise. Perhaps not to you. You've been talking about it for a while, but the government of Mexico unboxes alien corpses. I mean, this was reality. This was not a movie, although it looked like a movie, right? I know what anybody's thinking. Why are you talking about this? But the reality is Mexico's unboxing aliens. Politicians in their Congress are self-described UFO experts are claiming that these two small corpses that were retrieved from Cusco, Peru, that they date back to 1,000 years, they said, are stirring a lot of excitement around the world and confusing the world. This is where the confusion comes in, that are aliens real? Are we visited from other planets? These things were tested, DNA testing, C14 testing, all kinds of stuff, and they come up with saying that 30% of DNA that they've never been found anywhere else. Jacob, you've talked about this before. It's no news to you. You've been talking about it since the 70s, not as a UFO propagandist, but the warning of what they can use UFO for in the days of Jesus' return, before Jesus' return. Can you remind us of some of that, but also as these disclosures get closer and closer, what does this mean for Christians in terms of how to defend our faith in light of all these deception?
You talking to me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I see it as something that is continuous with what is happening in the zeitgeist, the spirit of the age. As I've stated before, I think going back to Buck Rogers in the 1930s, I think Superman in the 1950s, I think Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, E.T. and Close Encounters, these things in pop culture are only pop culture. However, they are influencing the spirit of the age, and the spirit of the age are influencing these projects of the media, that people will begin looking for an extraterrestrial savior. I have not had any doubt since the 1970s, relating it to the Nephilim, which is a very cautious subject because there's so many crazy people with conspiracy theorists about the Nephilim, many of them claiming to be Christian. Nonetheless, just as it was in the days of Noah, I just see this as part and parcel of that. Satan is going to do everything he can to make it seem as plausible as possible for people to believe these things. Now, these things are 1,000 years old. If they are, it seems to be from the Inca Indians in Peru. Who knows? I mean, they cannot be definitive about it.
No, they can't.
But if they find even a slight amount of evidence for water on Mars, there's life on Mars. They amplify rudimentary shreds of evidence into a hypothesis that they begin to treat as a fact because it's what they want to believe. And I think that that is what is going to transpire with this. Let us remember something. There will be demonoids. There will be demonoids. They've existed before. The Anakim were demonoids in the scripture. They come in a biological manifestation, but they are of a demonic nature. And that is going to happen again. What these specific things are, I don't know, because the scientists themselves are not conclusive. They don't know. But what I do know is the spirit of the age setting people up, and they will subscribe to it.
I think it's very interesting at this time, as we would say, the end of the age or getting close to the end of the age. You have these disclosures that in the past people thought they were just a joke. They were just movies. People made fun of people that believed in this tinfoil theories and all this stuff. Now it seems that more people are convinced that, hey, maybe the government is hiding this stuff. Maybe the government and of course the U.S. government,
yes,
the European government, Mexican government now. Obviously, it's being used as a ploy to get people to believe something that obviously we believe they're. In a sense, they're real in a sense of demonic activity, but not what people think in movies and not what people think in terms of extraterrestrial life.
That is absolutely true. The Pentagon and NASA are admitting things that they didn't used to admit. Why is that happening now?
It's a crazy story, man. I don't know what to say. Jay,
hiding, producing. What's the difference, really?
No doubt. I think it's of course going to be used in a major. I think Jacob's right. I think I agree with him that these things are just more and more to erode the Christian faith, because ultimately, Jacob, isn't that, and this is the apologetic side of things, is it going to challenge believers if these disclosures continue on and people just put their faith in this thing that, okay,
you're going to have very flaky people professing to be evangelical trying to associate these things with the flying saucers, as they call them, from Ezekiel chapter 1. There are people professing to be born again who are into that. You can see them writing stuff. They'll put stuff on the internet about it. Absolutely. The world is going to buy it anyhow. Most of the world is going to buy it anyhow. Remember, Satan is going after believers. And that's what he's going to do. They take things like there was a sign in heaven when Jesus came the first time, and these are going to be signs in heaven. What they're forgetting is the scriptures tell us the Antichrist and false prophet are going to show signs in the heavens.
Yes.
Part of the deception by which the Antichrist is going to con the world is going to be cosmic signs. Now, when the devil does these cosmic signs, to accommodate the rise of Antichrist and false prophet, which he will achieve through their agency. It's going to be Satan counterfeiting what God is doing in the signs and wonders that you see in the book of Joel.
Right.
Antichrist will attempt to counterfeit and mimic what Christ is doing and is going to do. He comes on the white horse before Jesus comes on the white horse. Revelation 6 and Revelation 19, there'll be signs in the heavens, while Antichrist will show signs in the heavens before those signs, heralding the return of Christ. Then they'll see the sign of the Son of Man and the signs in Ezekiel. Joel.
Yeah.
Satan will imitate the cosmic phenomena that will herald the return of Jesus.
I'd like to go back to something that happened during World War II. It's called the Battle of Los Angeles. For several hours in the night, Los Angeles was completely locked down, and there were mortars going off. There were all sorts of anti-aircraft guns that were fighting supposed alien invasion. You can look it up. Was in the news quite a bit. That incident was used by the U.S. government to basically convince for more funding on West Coast fortifications for World War II. The government always uses sensationalism,
yes,
to fund their programs. So if you can imagine having a giant disaster when it comes to, like a natural disaster, they'll get money to help, but the money that they get will also be used for other things.
yes.
In the same way, they will use UFO threats. They will use aliens to get funding for their different programs.
Massive expansion.
Yes.
Massive expansion. Absolutely right. What is interesting is that they have actually admitted that they seem to be that these aircrafts, these aliens, whatever you want to call them, are very interested in our nuclear armament. They will go. They claim is that they would go over different ships. They would go over different destroyers, and they would want to know what's going on. And they even admitted, the Russian government even admitted that for a time they took over the controls of their nuclear missiles, and they were locked out of it until obviously some time passed and they were able to get back in, and that some of these missiles were aimed at the U.S. It's quite an amazing phenomenon, and what's going on with the government and aliens. And you're right, Jay, the claim is, of course, to upgrade their systems, to upgrade the missiles, to expand their budget, and ultimately, since we're talking about war, this is what's going on now. Russia's Navy port in Sevastopol and Crimea on fire, massive Ukrainian attack using British cruise missiles, and the Crimean Peninsula, which is, of course, the whole conflict can be summed up that whoever controls it, that's the key strategic warm water port for the territory. So Ukraine scores big hits there. They took out a couple of submarines, Russian, at least two of them, and some of their landing ships. Big issues, Jacob. This is again another big landmark for this war. It appears that they successfully have done it. Putin is very much promising retaliation, especially against the British, because they provided the cruise missiles, and he's also upset at Rishi Sunak for providing the training to go after Russian nuclear plants, which they claim British troops been training Ukrainian troops. So unpack that a little bit more, Jacob. We know the war's been going on for a while. It's Russia, it's Ukraine, but it's really NATO, the U.S., and the other allies in the East, China, and of course now we got a little North Korea news. But this one's a big one. Sevastopol, Crimean port. So what's going on there?
We have to understand something, that there are no major Russian naval bases in the Sea of Azov. They are only, Sevastopol is the place. What Norfolk, Virginia is to the Atlantic Fleet of the United States, and what San Diego is to the Pacific, or Puget Sound is to the Pacific fleets of the United States, or Pearl Harbor. It's something of that magnitude. It's a Pearl Harbor, it's a Norfolk, it's a San Diego. All Russian naval deployments in the Mediterranean depend on Sevastopol. All of them. Russian access to the Sea of to the Suez Canal for Russian naval vessels to reach the Indian Ocean. Again, it's got to go via Sevastopol. The way that Russian ships would go from Vladivostok all the way around from the Far East via the Indian Ocean up the Red Sea through the Suez Canal. Where do they go? Well, a few may go to Leningrad eventually, but most Sevastopol. Without Sevastopol, the Russian Navy is severely crippled in its operational capacity. Now, there are two vulnerabilities strategically affecting it. One is, of course, if the Turks could ever close the Dardanelles. If the Turks would have closed the Dardanelles, denying Russian naval vessels access to the Sea of Bosphorus, connecting the Black Sea with the Mediterranean, that would be one. The second is obviously a destruction of the port of Sevastopol. That is what it is. Russia is very concerned about it. Russia is not as concerned about losing Crimea as they are of losing the naval port at Sevastopol located in Crimea. The main reason they need Crimea is because of Sevastopol. That is the situation. There can be no resurgence strategically of the Soviet Union without a naval resurgence, and that is impossible right now without Sevastopol. They have no port in the Sea of Azov. And even if there were, the Ukrainians could probably hit that as well. However, having said that, Russia has been hurt, but not nearly as bad as the Ukraine. The Ukraine is being demolished, badly demolished, very badly. It is a stalemate in which neither side is winning. The damage to Russia and the damage to the Russian economy is being overstated by the Western media. There is damage, and it is not insignificant, but nothing like what is being portrayed in the Western media. The damage to the Ukraine, however, is being underreported. Now, look, the whole thing is bad for Russia. The very fact that Finland created another 740 miles of border with a NATO country, it blew up in their face. The very fact that they've had probably at least 65 to 70,000 fatalities and 150,000 casualties. It's worse than Afghanistan, much worse. They've already lost more than the Americans did in Vietnam in 8 years or whatever it was, now in a year and a half. It is bad. It's causing labor shortages. There are other effects. What happened with the Wagner Group, although Putin's hands wound up actually stronger afterwards, it does show the weakness of the overall Russian system. Russia knows, and Putin knows, they lost the Warsaw Pact. They lost the Soviet Union. They lost the CIS. The only thing they have to lose now is a fragmentation of Russia itself. Things like Chechnya, okay? That's what they're afraid of. That is part of his reason for wanting to reassert the Russian presence in the areas of the Ukraine that are demographically populated by Russians. Now, of course, it is illegal by international law because Ukraine was part of Crimea was part of the Ukraine at the time the Soviet Union collapsed. It's what they call the Ute Possibius Juris. It's legally the Crimea belongs to Ukraine legally by international law. What Putin did was illegal, and what he's doing in these border areas of the eastern Ukraine is again illegal. But we have to understand why he's doing it. The Warsaw Pact is gone, Soviet Union is gone, CIS is gone, and if he's not, in his thinking, if they're not expanding one way, they're going to be shrinking internally the other way. Russia is afraid. It's blown up in his face. The thing that people are not talking about is the Finland factor and the Sweden factor, particularly the Finland factor. He's made a consolidated Europe in NATO. He strengthened NATO, the solidarity and the willingness of the countries in Europe to unite against what he's doing. It blew up in his face. But the people who are the biggest victims and are paying the worst price are the people of Ukraine, who already had the most corrupt government in Eastern Europe. Let's remember something. The government of the Ukraine was even more corrupt than the government of Russia.
No,
That's
you're
why-
absolutely right.
That's why Biden
No,
was in it.
yeah, I mean it's something that's happening, at the same time Russia, at the same time Ukraine, at the same time NATO. What about this Vladimir Putin's warning of serious consequences against the British government?
He does that kind of saber rattling. We should not discount the possibility of this thing getting out of control and pushing the world towards some kind of a conflict between Russia and NATO. We should not discount the possibility of that happening. People have been saying desperate people do desperate things. He's getting desperate and he has a nuclear arsenal. We cannot discount that. We cannot ignore that. On the other hand, it's the boy who cried wolf. He has said such things so often that his words lose potency because people get tired of hearing it. That is what's happening.
The one thing that's really fascinating about that, it's the Starlink connection to this war and the Starlink connection with obviously Elon Musk and what's going on in Crimea. This was actually last year when Musk actually opened up Starlink to the Ukrainian government, but then they asked him to expand it into Crimea and other areas, and he refused to do so because he says he didn't want to basically make a bigger war, a war that was already there, but a bigger war, especially if he's going to reveal some of the strategic areas of Russia if they provided the Starlink. He didn't do it. The government, the U.S. government has gone after him. The Ukrainian government has gone after him. Now he's under some fire because as a private citizen, they're saying he has the how does CNN put it? He has the responsibility to provide these things to Ukraine, to NATO, to Russia, to the U.S., and he didn't do it. So therefore, he's a traitor.
First of all, they're being hypocrites. They're being hypocrites. In decades past, and not in the too distant past, American mercenaries or American interests who participated in any kind of foreign intervention in other countries were threatened with prosecution under the Logan Act and under certain other legislation where private citizens or the private sector does not have the right to become involved in a foreign conflict. So their legal argument in itself is very, very weak. These people are talking politics, not law, as usual. Secondly, we have to understand that his network, I had no idea, he has more satellites than any government or any other corporation or entity in the world.
Yeah, that was news to me when I found
Now,
out.
I'm not saying he has the most advanced satellites. He doesn't have the Blackbirds or the reconnaissance satellites held by the NSA and the Pentagon. I'm not saying he has the best satellites, but he has the most satellites.
Yeah, that's a problem. And the ones that they want, those are the ones they want. It's the one he has.
Yeah, see, lower grade, the technology's gotten so much better. It's like a cell phone. People in India, their cell phone is their computer for poor people.
Right.
You know, it may be a lower grade technology than a computer, but you can do a lot of things that a computer can do. You can do things with a good cell phone that you used to be able to only do with a studio quality camera or 4G camera or something like that. Well, it's the same principle with satellite reconnaissance. You can do things now with a lower grade satellite that a higher grade reconnaissance satellite had to do in decades past.
It is fascinating to me that he's actually plays a big role in this war. I mean, they obviously want to sanction him. They want to take Starlink away, Neuralink away, Tesla away.
You have to understand something. Because he took over Twitter and because he was arguing for free speech and against censorship, the federal government was acting unconstitutionally, if not criminally. The government had no right to censor free speech. It's unconstitutional. But then the government goes to social media platforms like Twitter and tells them to do it.
Right. Twitter
and politicians, particularly in the Democratic Party, were threatening these social media platforms. If you don't do this, we're going to do this. You're going to have problems. We're going to crack down on you with this and this and this if you don't engage in the kind of censorship that we want. We can't suppress free speech because of the Constitution, but you can. And if you don't do it, we'll come after you. That's how corrupt the government is. It's how corrupt the FBI and the deep state is. It's how corrupt it is. Okay, so you cannot take this issue with Ukraine in isolation. They want to intimidate Elon Musk overall because of his pro-free speech ethos.
Right. No,
And again, I'm not calling him a conservative. He's not.
No, he's not.
That's what's happening.
They're definitely calling for that he sabotaged a Ukrainian attack on Crimea. This is how much they hate Russia, that they're calling people that don't give in to the demands of Ukraine. And to his statement is, if the Ukrainian government is asking me for something, that they're not in charge of the American people or companies. That's his statement. It's like I still give him Starlink. I just didn't open it up to the Russian area, which Crimea. I guess technically he sees Crimea as part of being Russia. So there's a sanction on Russia. So he didn't want to open it up. Plus, it would have created a major war. Could you imagine? Could you imagine? It's a complete destruction of that area, the Sevastopol ports, the ports and the ships. It would have been a major catastrophe. But he's not just involved in the war, but like it or not, he's involved in the war because of his company. But he's also involved in some Israeli news and some Jewish here. Actually, Netanyahu was coming to Silicon Valley to meet with Musk and to discuss anti-Semitism on Twitter, AI, and satellite access. Maybe they want some Starlink access to his technology. I don't know. But
the guy I knew, I didn't know him well, but I knew him. My parents knew him. His name was Jackie Mason, the quintessential Jewish American comedian. Jackie Mason hated B'nai B'rith Anti-Defamation League. He said that the previous leader before Greenblatt, he couldn't stand them. He said the guy was a hypocrite. He said they exploited anti-Semitism for their own gain. Okay, he didn't like the ADL. He didn't like B'nai B'rith. Jackie, this is Jackie Mason now. He was the Jews' Jew, okay? A lot of conservative Jews know exactly what has become of B'nai B'rith and what Greenblatt is. Greenblatt led the charge in rehabilitating the anti-Semitic Al Sharpton. After Al Sharpton's anti-Semitic tirades, the rehabilitation of Al Sharpton was led by Greenblatt. Greenblatt went after, what's her name? Chaya Reshik.
Chaya Reshik, that's right.
She went after, they go after other Jews who are not left-wing Jews. They are just part of they are part of the woke establishment. They are not what they pretend to be.
Yeah, I just want to make
as the NAACP under Benjamin Jealous changed from something what it used to be into now just another woke voice.
Yeah.
Under Benjamin Jealous, the NAACP, the same thing happened to B'nai B'rith under Greenblatt and his predecessor.
Yeah. I just want to let everybody know, if you don't know who Chaya Reshik is, she's a lady that runs TikTok, Libs of TikTok, which is a popular site as well on Twitter, known as X now. And she just posts things that liberals and progressives already post with no comment and no editorial, no editing. And she shows how crazy and deliberately just maleficent they are. She gets in trouble, and the ADL wants to go after her, sue her, get her off, deplatform her. She's a Jewish girl. So, but it's not anti-Semitism. It's basically, Greenblatt said it's anti-LGBTQ. So, Jacob, are they expanding their scope? I thought it was just basically anti-Semitism that they go after.
Well, no, they're doing the same thing that the NAACP did. The NAACP was concerned with the civil rights of Black people and the advancement of people of color.
Yes.
With Benjamin Jealous, they became spokesmen for homosexuals, for lesbians, for other things. The NAACP was transformed into something it never was, but it kept the same name. Well, B'nai B'rith, the ADL, Anti-Defamation League, is the same thing. It kept the same name, but it was transformed into something that it never was. Greenblatt and his predecessor transformed it.
Yeah, that's what we see today. Jay, jump in anytime. Jump in anytime.
Well, I do want to kind of go back to the idea of what we're seeing with Elon Musk real quick.
Yeah.
It has a historical precedent. So during the time that the United States government imprisoned people in Manzanar, they came to them about a year later and said, "We need help with this war. We need a loyalty oath, and we need all the young men in your camp to go to war." And if you said no, you went to Tulare. And Tulare was like going to prison as compared to Manzanar, which was already a prison camp. That's the same thing you're seeing with Elon Musk. We need your help with this. Oh, you're not going to help us with this. So now the ADL is coming against you.
Yeah.
CNN's coming against you, our media arm.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if the IRS isn't auditing him.
Yeah, no, they are. The DOJ and the SEC is going after him for his stocks and all the, basically saying he's tampering and doing all these things with the stock.
So you're seeing the government basically expressing, "Oh, you're not going to help us, huh? So guess where you get to go? You get to go to modern day Tulare." And as far as the ADL is concerned, I wonder, does the ADL go after the people that are trying to prevent Israel having any, that they won't go against any Muslim organization that is anti-Semitic, truly.
100% anti-Semitic.
But they'll go against people that are anti-LGBT. Let's see. Anti-Defamation League. Interesting. They're not doing their job.
It's like the ACLU. David Lister's back in Southern California. David Lister, welcome. Welcome to the other side of the camp, behind the enemy line. And we'll get you caught up on it as you're listening to Jacob and talk about the ADL. Anybody can answer this, by the way. Obviously, they went after the Jewish girl. They go after Elon Musk. They demanded $60 billion from Meta, where they wouldn't throttle Donald Trump in the 2020 election. Facebook refused to throttle his post, and therefore the ADL went after them for $60 billion, basically calling for a boycott. They're going to call for a boycott of Twitter. Jacob, they call themselves a small 501c3 organization. I don't think small or this little nonprofit, little David out in New York qualifies.
No, they play on the woke team. They're just another player on the woke team. That's all.
What a disaster. Now, the Netanyahu connection, I thought it was interesting. He doesn't come to see Biden. He doesn't come to see Blinken. He doesn't come to see any of that. He comes to see Musk. Do you see anything? I mean, we can speculate all we want, but do you see anything interesting in that connection?
It shows the power of Musk. But Netanyahu is well aware that the Jewish American liberal establishment is becoming increasingly alienated from Israel. He's very, very wary of that. He does not want to aggravate that and make it any worse than it already is. But certainly he would prefer to broker some kind of a ceasefire between the ADL and Elon Musk if he's able to do so, certainly. But he's very well aware that Israel can no longer rely on American Jewry in the way to the extent it once did. In fact, he's also aware of Israel's dependence on premillennial evangelical lobby.
Fascinating stuff. Any thoughts on that, David? I know you're getting cut up after a, well, it wasn't a long flight, but after your flight from Salt Lake.
Yeah, no, not on this. I have something else on Elon, but it's on a computer thing. But anyway.
Oh, do you have it with you or?
Well, I was going to talk about, he keeps promoting the next generation of stuff. He calls it the Tesla bot. It's called general artificial intelligence, which is beyond the large language models, which everybody ought to catch up in, because this is going to change the whole software industry, make so many service industries, these large language models so efficient and everything. And like one wonderful thing it's going to do is get rid of newspaper reporters. There won't be any need, and these large language models also, what's interesting, I call them the large lying models, because they lie just like the media. So one lying thing will replace another lying bunch. But the next thing, this general artificial intelligence, is beyond that. This is Elon's bot that's going to be like, you need a security guide. It's a bot that actually thinks and uses the large language models. It can actually grow in its intelligence. It doesn't need a pension. It doesn't have to worry about healthcare. It's just all sorts of things that's already going to be transforming just about everything in our profiles, in our stock profiles, and all these things. It's going to be incredible what's coming. And it's probably going to happen before we even know it.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that toward the end of it. So,
okay, sorry.
No, that's a good point about Elon, but he does have an AI company. I forget the name of the AI company he owns, but he is going after, and it is in their ethos. It says we're going to discover the secrets of the universe. This is under ethos of the new company. So, general intelligence, general AI, it is unreal. We have not even been. I mean, they call it what do they call them? Intellects. Archilex, yeah. So basically, Archilex, intelligent artificial intelligence that are going to open up the secrets of the universe. God forbid when that thing's, if they come or they're going to come, I don't know, but it's going to be fascinating. We'll talk about that when we get to the AI stuff. I think it's called XAI. Thank you, XAI. Kim Jong-un met with Putin, no doubt for his support, get weapons, get artificial intelligence, military intelligence. Jacob, is that troubling to you? Kim Jong-un goes to Russia, meets with Putin, deals made, and I showed you the video. North Korean troops to be sent to fight alongside Russia, to assist Russia.
Initially, there's supposed to be logistics in a support role. We shall see. But the very fact that Russia has had to go to its former weapons clients, its customers, like Iran and North Korea, for resources to fight a war against Ukraine. That in itself is a humiliation for Putin and for Russia. The very fact that it has to go to them is a humiliation in itself for Putin's Russia.
Yeah, that's quite troubling, isn't it? Now North Korea, I mean, are they going to be fighting alongside them in Ukraine?
Well, initially, it's supposed to be in logistical roles, supply chain, supplies and logistics and ordnance.
Jacob, it's troubling. Not only that, the first deployment will be about 20,000 soldiers, but you have Jinping going after other islands, Russia, China connection, Siberia, the Taiwan, the problem with Taiwan, 68 fighters, Chinese fighters, bombers approaching the island, another exercise, quote unquote. China's in trouble. No doubt it's in big trouble economically, and which makes it very, very potentially very dangerous, as you have a wounded animal that is going to fight back. And
That's right.
They're angry with the U.S., they're angry with the West, they're angry with the sanctions, and they're angry with us that we keep supporting Ukraine, the U.S., and keep supporting Taiwan. Comments on that? We'll go to David first, and then we'll go to Jacob.
Well, like you said, a wounded animal, and they're unstable because they're having problems with their youth, 25 to 30% unemployment. They can't replace themselves. They only have 11% aerial land to farm, so they have food problems. And now India is fast becoming a major power in computing and other things, and they're very worried about it. And now with the new AI ARM thing, the artificial intelligence chip company having a great IPO yesterday, and they're off to the races, and they're stuck. They need Taiwan's chips to keep in the game.
Definitely. Jacob, your thoughts?
Something else that I've said it on 2 previous occasions here on Catching Up. When Mao became a victim of something that he engineered called the Cultural Revolution in the late 60s.
Yeah.
He consolidated a national sense of artificial union with an external threat by a shootout on the border with Russia on the Arma River. Now, this is at a time when they were both communists and both supporting North Vietnam against the United States and Australia, etc. Why would he do that? Even shoot it out with Russia? That is the typical Chinese way of bringing about a sense of rapprochement when you're in a crisis, to bring about a sense of national unity. You play the patriotism card by military conflict. That explains much of the aggression being exhibited towards Taiwan and towards and even towards India and the Himalayas. They are playing a nationalist card and using a military abyss game of going to the abyss and then withdrawing, then going back to the edge of the abyss. They're doing that to consolidate national power because of the internal divisions. Something, again, not being reported by the Western media is this. He is trying to consolidate as much power within China as he can, much the same as Putin is doing in Russia. 2 generals have disappeared. Now it appears the defense and the foreign minister are gone.
Yeah,
but there is still a party eldership. He got rid of one of them at the party conference.
yeah,
But
that
there's
was
still a party eldership that has a lot of influence within the party and within the country. The economy is a major, major concern, and he's highly, highly vulnerable. He, too, like Putin, is acting out of a sense of desperation to a degree. He may not be as desperate as Putin is in the imminent sense, but as David pointed out, the heyday of China is over. The heyday of China is over. What China can be now is like what Japan is. Japan in the 80s had its heyday. Japan is never going to be what it was in the 80s for the reasons of the economy and the demography. China is the same. It is never going to be what it was in the 90s and in the first decade of the 21st century. Its heyday is over. It'll be there. It'll be a power to be reckoned with, but it's not going to be what it was. It's just not going to. India is, to a degree, the rising star, but they have their own problems.
Yeah.
Yep.
Population problem, economic problem, debt
And
problem.
the fact that they're divided between Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs.
Yeah, religious problems, absolutely. And I want to touch on China before we move on to the Azerbaijan story. It's the problems with, we heard of Evergrande, but now we have the other company that's having major problems. And that is going to be, they have a $7 billion, $7 billion loss. China's property crisis deepens. This is Country Garden. Evergrande, Country Garden. They might as well break a dam now because that's what's going to happen.
What's notable is Evergrande sent shockwaves not throughout China but globally.
Yes.
But Country Garden is a bigger conglomerate than Evergrande.
Yeah.
And they missed payment on a relatively small loan. They did not have sufficient liquidity to make a scheduled payment on now it was billions, but it's still relatively small in terms of the overall supposed capital base of the company. It missed a payment.
Yep.
That tells you something.
Yeah, there is a liquidity crisis, no doubt, in the world. We'll get to that economy in a minute. Jacob, just before we move on from the war, the Azerbaijan thing, Armenia, Azerbaijan, underreported, as you like to call the media normally does that, right? But it's got some deep implications in terms of biblical prophecy because of the nations involved.
Yes.
You have Israel on the side of Azerbaijan. You have Iran who's supporting Armenia, calling for Russia to come to their aid, calling for Syria and Iraq to come for the aid. And you have Azerbaijan with Turkey and Israel on the other side. Strange bedfellows, no doubt. Strange
Very
bedfellows
strange.
Along the way.
Very strange. And it demonstrates that politics can trump religion.
Yeah.
Short term, at least short term. politics can trump even radical Islam short term. What is happening in the Nagorno-Karabakh? To the mind of the Armenian people, this has roots in what happened over 100 years ago in the Armenian genocide with the Turks.
Yep.
The Christians are being slaughtered, 2 to 3 million. The forgotten Holocaust. It has roots in that. The Armenian mind will naturally associate it with that. Now, Israel's interest in Azerbaijan is not that they're anti-Armenian. There's a number of Armenians who live in Israel. There's an Armenian quarter in the old city of Jerusalem.
Yes,
I
there
knew
is.
Armenians in Haifa. You've got a large Armenian American community in California that's very similar economically to the Jewish American community in California. It is that Israel has to outflank Iran, and they have an Islamic ally. They can no longer rely on Turkey as the Islamic ally because of the president of Turkey, because of Erdogan. So now they have another one, and that is imperative to their foreign and defense policy. That is the Israeli interest. That is the Israeli connection. The consequences of this, however, is that it is driving the Armenians into a friendship with Putin. There's no love lost between the Russians and the Armenians. But what are they going to do in the face of the Azerbaijanis? The real wild card are the Iranians.
Right.
They're simply looking out for their economic interests. And they want to be able to have eventually a pipeline that will go from Russia into Iran. But in order for that to happen, they're going to need the cooperation of the Armenians to make it economically viable, so that Karg Island in Iran on the Persian Gulf will be an outlet for Russian oil exports into the Indian Ocean, circumventing the Black Sea. That is the part of the long-term strategic thinking of Russia and Iran. As you've said, very strange bedfellows indeed.
Yeah, no doubt. And we'll go to David real quick, and I'll just give one analysis and see what you guys think.
I'm sorry.
I said we'll go to David Lister first, and then I'll just give you some analysis of what I think about this war. Go ahead, David.
The Armenian War with the
Yeah, just the strange bedfellows with Israel and Azerbaijan, and then you have Iran with Armenia. It just seems to be so odd.
The
but
whole, the whole war is everything is just shifting. You know, everybody's getting in bed with somebody they think that can protect them, but America is so weak, not involved in any of this, that people have to go to whoever they think can help them. But how is, I can't imagine Russia offering Armenia a lot of help, being they're in trouble on their own problems, and so that's going to be a problem. But it's like I said, the wild card, Iran. Who knows what these guys are going to do? And then people talking nuclear war. I mean, the world is in big trouble. And I mean, and look, we're getting weaker and weaker. I talked a few weeks ago about inflation being imported in our country. Brent crude went up to 93 today. Regular oil 90. It'll be 100 pretty soon. And it just makes it tougher for Americans.
Yeah, Azerbaijan has a lot of oil, and part of this conversation is, some of the oil needs to be transported to Europe. They want Russia and Iran wants Azerbaijan to use their pipelines to get this thing done. So there's another equation there that needs to be considered. But the one
China,
go ahead.
China stopped. They're needing funds maybe for the real estate thing, so they stopped their oil importation and storage and everything all of a sudden, and then readjusted their currency against the dollar. So these are interesting moves that they've done, maybe trying to lower it so they can pay us back with cheaper yuan.
always the case. It's
But
money
also
tree.
understand something. What's happening with the oil prices, the number one factor is not Russia, by no means. The number one factor of what's happening is Saudi Arabia reducing production and its control of OPEC plus. This is the fault of the Saudis. They're no friends of America. They may be friends of the Bush family because they have the Bush family in their back pocket. They may be friends of Clinton because they've had the Emirates likewise had the Clintons in their back pocket, but particularly the Bush family and people like Cheney. But they're no friends of America. They're knifing us in the back just as they always have. And they're trying to get strategic concessions out of the United States, just as they are out of Israel. They're playing their own game. That's MLB. That's what's happening with the Saudi Arabians. They are what is the primary cause of the oil prices going higher again. That, and of course, Biden. But the United States is, again, increasing its own domestic production. It has to.
Well,
Yeah.
one thing with Saudi Arabia, they used to could pump 10 million barrels of oil a day, and they haven't now for years. And some people are speculating is they don't have the oil they used to. And they, so that could be part of the problem, is just hiding the problems that they don't have the oil like they used to or can't produce it. So some oil people are talking about a real possibility of that. So
I wish that was the case, but I don't know if it is. The Saudi advantage is, okay, there are other countries that have that much oil. Canada and Venezuela and Russia are all up there with Saudi Arabia.
Venezuela's got plenty of oil.
Venezuela, Canada, and Russia, and the United States.
Yeah.
But it's the light crude. Cheap to pump, cheap to refine. That gives them tremendous leverage over the global oil price. Everybody else's oil is more expensive.
But even now at $90, why are our rigs counts here in America going down? I mean, if we had cheap oil that we could produce just a couple of years ago under Biden at $60, they were just pumping as fast as they could. Now it's $90 and they're shutting oil wells down.
Yeah, exactly.
Biden is going to be forced to open more rigs, to allow more rigs to be open. He's going to be forced to.
One scenario with the before we get into the economy, the Russian and Syria stuff, obviously with Iran, could that open up the scenario of Damascus in the book of Isaiah? Could that open up the scenario where you have a major conflict? And we're not talking small conflict. We're talking Israel, Turkey, and other nations that may jump in against Iran, Russia, and Syria. And that leaves Damascus very open because it's right smack in the middle.
We have to remember that just this past week, the Israelis bombed an airbase used by Russia inside Syria.
Yeah.
Now, I don't get overly excited about the Gog and Magog as some people do. That's perspective. But to answer your question, is it certainly a possibility? Yes.
Jacob, the Miley, I mean, this whole thing comes down to like a American weakness and unwillingness to do anything, and Biden and all that stuff. We'll get into it in a moment. But Miley's retiring. You going to send him a gift?
He should not be allowed to retire. He should be put in Leavenworth for the rest of his life, if not put against the wall, if he's found guilty by court-martial. But the man should be court-martialed. If he made that phone call to China and went above the chain of command, that is the commander-in-chief, and made that call to China, that man should be court-martialed. He's not the only cheap political bureaucrat with stars on his shoulders pretending to be a soldier. Brown is worse.
The guy that was going to replace him, yeah. Is he made out to be the fall guy, David? Is he made out to be the fall guy for what happened in Afghanistan and the impetus of the United States all over the world?
For Milley to be?
Yeah, to you.
I mean, he's just one part of that puzzle. I mean, of course, Biden said, get everybody out. He was an idiot in shutting down the base. I mean, the plan was under Trump, was to be an orderly withdrawal with getting our stuff out and holding the one main base there at Bagram. But Milley and all of these generals are all incompetent. Everybody they put in is just these sensitive types that have no real military experiences that I can see. That you see even ex-generals who usually never say anything about current change of command actually saying that these guys are treacherous and working against America's best interest. And that's on that. I can never recall ex-generals doing that. And thank goodness for Senator Tuberville from down in Alabama not letting any of these generals get higher ranks and moving up. He's froze all
Yes.
of them.
Yes.
He goes, there won't, who knows if there can be a replacement, because he's the Joint Chief Staff top one. So without Tuberville releasing these guys, we
When you
won't
got
have
what's happening in the world, in Afghanistan, what happened in Afghanistan, and what's happening in the Ukraine, and what's happening with Taiwan, and what's happening with Iran. When you have these things taking place, okay, and you have senior Pentagon brass saying their priorities are going to be diversity and inclusivism. Our enemies laugh at America. They laugh at us.
No,
These people are the scum of the scum.
Yeah. So I take it no retirement gift.
Yeah.
Hopefully they get no retirement. I defund all of them for what they've done. But I just wonder if they're not, these guys aren't on the payroll. Just I truly believe Biden and his family is on China's payroll, but who else?
Yeah, don't discount it. So
retirement, he's just going to go work for another agency. Let's be clear.
That's right. He will. Yeah.
Maybe MSNBC will hire him. Oh,
No.
God forbid. Anyway, we just hit an hour mark. Just want to remind everybody, we're going to be going backstage. We got some questions. We're going backstage. We got a really important topic to discuss: evangelicalism, and of course, what to do in California with Newsom quoting scripture to support abortion. So we'll talk about that in a moment. And at the same time, we want to thank you for watching, and thank you for being on different platforms. We encourage those who are watching on YouTube and Facebook to go over to Rumble and, of course, Memorial.tv, memorialtv.org. But we're also on Vimeo. We're also on Telegram. We're also on different platforms. And, of course, we want to make sure that we say thank you guys for watching, those who are watching online right now live. And we welcome you in the name of the Lord. We love you. We thank the Lord for you. And we're also thank you for those who are watching later. So we got a few topics to go. Then we jump over to Backstage, but we won't be on YouTube and on Facebook for that one. So you're going to have to jump over to the other platform. So, Jacob, the economy seems to be imploding probably faster than, I don't know. You can make a case for faster than an ice melting in Southern California desert. But Biden keeps illegal aliens, immigrants in Texas, rather than sending them to the other states that don't want them.
He's trying to do.
Yeah, he's concerned about his son. He's, who knows who's really in charge of the whole thing. Chicago's imploding with the economic problems. Now the city wants to take over a grocery store. We'll start there. We'll start there because then we go to JP Morgan and what our good friend Jamie Dimon said. But we'll start there with the Bidenomics. He says the strongest economy ever. Bidenomics, strongest economy ever.
Look, he's a senile corruptocrat. It's just that there's enough people of low enough intelligence to believe him. They're called Democrats. Not that I'm a Republican, but there are people who are stupid enough to believe such idiocy. People have. When you have a 20% increase in food prices since he became president, don't complain about the price of bananas and coffee. It's what you voted for. You're only getting what you deserved. That's like I tell Black Americans. 98% of Black Americans voted for Obama. Don't complain that the average African American family income declined by $900 after 2 terms of Obama. Don't complain about it. You have no right to complain. It's what you voted for. So he's obviously delusional. But let's answer your question on a broader scale. India is growing, but it's growing out of a situation of such unspeakable poverty that the growth is not going to benefit a lot of the people in India for a long time.
Yes.
Okay. China's in trouble. As we'll be looking at next week, I was just there recently, Germany is in trouble, which spells trouble for the EU. Okay. Economically, Russia is not in as much trouble as the Western media says, but it's in trouble. China, certainly. The United States is in trouble. Nobody is doing all that well. On a comparative scale, the USA and India, for the time being, are doing comparatively well compared to the others. But that's all. They've got their own problems, both of them. And that includes the United States. To India's advantage, it is able to pay in rupees, a currency nobody wants. How much chicken curry can you buy? It's able to buy oil from Putin very cheap, paying in rupees. That is helping its economy, certainly. Okay, that is helping its economy, certainly, as well as certain other things. But there are really no rising stars. Australia is not doing well economically, not by any means. Canada is declining under Trudeau. There is no rising star. Nobody is really doing all that well. There is a global vacuum. The people who said China is going to do this and China is going to do that and China is going to be, these was 10 years ago, I said these people don't know what they're talking about. I remember David Lister and myself, we were up in the New Territories in Hong Kong. And I said, look at this, David. This place is heading for trouble. We said that 10 years ago. It was just obvious to me. I've been to China a lot of times. I knew this could not continue. I knew something had to happen. And the thing I cited was their shadow banking. That's the main thing that I said, that this is going to hit the wall. That was 10 years ago, 12 years ago, maybe. There is nobody there. It is a global vacuum. Well, this kind of global vacuum presents an opportunity for somebody with a solution. And we know who that's going to be. All of these things. You're going to get somebody who's going to come along, and the kings of the north are going to fight the kings of the south, just like they did, Daniel predicted, that happened between the Roman Empire and with Antony and Cleopatra. That foreshadows what happens at the close of the age. A conflict between the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, between the developed world and the developing world. That is what is undergirding the immigration crisis at the American border. It is what is undergirding the Islamic and African mass illegal immigration into Europe. It was the first North-South war was the Falklands War. Even before the Iron Curtain came down, détente and Ostpolitik saw changes taking place in Europe. The real conflict was going to be the North-South. 1991, the first Gulf War, a North-South war. The second Gulf War in Iraq, a North-South war. There will be a conflict between the Western world and the developing world. And the Antichrist will come along and present himself as somebody with a formula to save Western civilization. And people will believe him. That is what is going to take place. When you have these renegade states with unstable governments, places like Pakistan have nuclear weapons. The world is in a very dangerous situation. If somebody comes along and claims to have the solution, and he comes along backed by a confederation of false religion, and it involves the miraculous, and it involves extraterrestrial signs and wonders and phenomena, what is going to stop it? Well, nothing is going to stop it. The only thing stopping it now is what the epistle to the Thessalonians, 2 Thessalonians, calls the catacomb, the restrainer. But a time is coming when the restrainer is not going to restrain. The Antichrist will come to power. This vacuum you see, geopolitically and geoeconomically, is something that is creating the opportunity the Antichrist will need and exploit. That is what's going to happen.
The Fed just reported that they're losing $758 million per day. They're in the hold $100 billion. those losses with the B. So they reached that kind of level. And obviously it has to do with the repos, the reverse repos and the interest on reserves. Jerome Powell is a disaster, but obviously no one's talking about it. I don't even know where to start with that one because it's so massive that here's our friend Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan says that changes are coming. New capital rules are coming. There's going to be exercising in the US, capital controls. Bank stocks are going to be damaged, stocks overall, more banking cost. It's going to be that even if it's behind us, when it's behind us, he says there's going to be repercussions for years, he emphasized. So he's talking about bank problems, which you're already seen those banks problems already with Silicon Valley and all those, but more coming, more bank mergers. We have seen this this past week. And central banks are literally losing money every single day. Jacob, they have to do something. They're going to have to do something. It's not going to be good.
Look, the biggest organized crime syndicate in the world is the World Economic Forum. But the major crime, the senior members of Crime Incorporated, it's not Lucky Luciano, you know, and it's not Carlo Gambino and Meyer Lansky. It's Schwab's slobs. And it is the European Central Bank, the Bank of England, the US Federal Reserve, the Bank of International Settlements, the IMF, the World Bank. These have to be seen as gangsters. There are two counterfeiters who are counterfeiting money. They're counterfeiters, but they do it with the approval of government. Yep. They are called the US Treasury and the Federal Reserve. These are counterfeiters. We have to understand the origins of these things. In its earliest rudiments, two criminal organizations were founded by Woodrow Wilson. One was the IRS, and the other was the Federal Reserve.
Right.
Okay. Yep. He's the founder of liberalism. He's the man who redesigned the Democratic Party as to what it became, and then Roosevelt took it further under the New Deal, and then Johnson took it further still, and so forth, until it became what it is now under Obama. But it was a series of stages, but it began with Wilson. Okay, with Woodrow Wilson. He founded these two criminal organizations. Eventually, when you let criminals continue to commit crime, they're going to threaten the entire system. Well, that is what has happened. Now, let's understand this a bit further. 2008, with the crash, you had the Occupy Wall Street movement. You had left-wing students and Antifa activists who were protesting capitalism, they thought, Occupy Wall Street. They were too stupid, too ignorant, and too moronic to realize that bank bailouts is not capitalism, it's socialism. They're socialists wanting socialism, too stupid to know that what they were protesting was socialism. What did the banks and corporations do? Instead of it being what happened with the subprime lending, and the Federal Reserve and the taxpayer bailing out the banks. Banks were getting money from the Fed under Obama for 0 interest and lending it out at 4 or 5%. Just open corruption. That was the national policy under Obama. Okay? Well, what do we do about this? The bank said, well, instead of making the real issue about economic injustice and about bank corruption and central bank corruption, we're going to make it about race, gender, and sexual orientation. Woke. So all these banks and all these corporations go woke. We're going to blame race. We're going to blame sexual orientation. We're going to blame bigotry against homosexuals and against women and you know, misogyny and all this. That's going to be where we're going to get the left to attack. And we're going to be their friends, so they'll leave us alone.
Yeah.
That's what the banks did. That is what
BlackRock,
Silicon Valley did.
Yeah.
That's what the corporations did. That is what has happened. But all they did is kick the can down the road. The economist who designed this time bomb, it's a time bomb. The man who designed it, John Milton Keynes, said, in the long term, we are all dead. In the long term, we are all doomed.
Yes.
They kicked the can down the road. Where do you kick the can when there's no more road? That is what we're coming to.
Yeah. No, you're
Borrow
right.
more money, build the road longer.
Now, countries around the world are going to notice. They obviously notice this, and especially when there's no sign that these losses are stopping anytime soon. Jacob, David,
Nope.
how long do you think these countries around the world will continue to accept this Federal Reserve note called cash that we have for goods and services, and that's when the road stops? And I don't know
Yeah,
how.
but why is the media not reporting the Democratic Party's policy of inflation reduction, of deficit reduction? They wanted this Deficit Reduction Act. They said that was going to be the savior. This is Bidenomics.
Bidenomics?
Well, they didn't reduce any deficit. It's gotten worse. And the media says nothing about it.
Well,
I guess they're
that's
dumber than we
because
thought.
that's because the media is nothing. You remember your sermon, The Birdcage, Jacob?
That's right.
Everybody repeats things. Well, that's what the media is.
Yep.
They're being told by the Democratic Party what to say. I mean, all you have to do is all across the nation, you see these people make these grab all these screenshots of Channel 4, Channel 2 in Chicago, and then Channel 2 in Pittsburgh, and all over the nation. And each commentator is saying the exact same thing with the exact same words on the same day. They're all on. They're all just nothing but those birds that repeat.
Yeah,
you're correct. It's the birdcage from Jeremiah. And politically, it's Goebbels. Tell the lie often enough, and people will think it's the truth.
Yeah,
and it's all across our nation. There's reporters don't deserve to have jobs. They're not reporters. They're nothing but mouthpieces. They're going to be replaced by these large language models. The sooner, the better. But at least I know the machines are programmed to lie.
Yes. All right, let's talk about that part real quick as we just heading down to the final few minutes. Regarding the economy. Now, it may be really difficult for people sometimes to understand the macro aspect of it. So let's boil down to something micro that it could be very practical and very real. So we know that robotics are going to become part of our everyday society. And when I was in the corporate world, we were bringing robotics in for a long time to do a lot of heavy lifting, manual labor, and things like that. Now, the AI wasn't as robust as it is today. But here's one example. California wants to bring about, or they did basically, are going to get a huge raise, $20 an hour, $20 an hour, fast food workers. And people are very happy about it. This is going to bring great relief and give us a cushion for the terrible inflation that's going on, because it's really, hard to live. I was reading an article about San Francisco fast food workers. They can't survive unless they have 3 jobs. Now they say we're going to have some relief. However, they don't think about the ramifications of it. This is what I want to talk about on the micro level. What are the ramifications of robotics coming in to replace those? What are the ramifications of food prices going up because now we have to pay more to the workers who are doing the job? Jacob, you can start. We'll go to David after. There's companies like Bear Robotics and Blendit and Flippy that are offering robots already very affordable if you do the comparison. But everybody's celebrating $20 an hour.
Again, when you have people who think that way and think it's wonderful, they're not looking at the fact that they're digging their own grave. Corporations are out to make money. You want $20 an hour? I can buy a robot that's computer controlled that can do your job, that I don't have to pay a pension or benefits or medical insurance. They don't have to have a day off. They don't have to have a coffee break. They don't have to have anything. You're going to be replaced by a robot. Now, when this happens on a wide enough scale, right now we're only talking about fast food. It's going to go into industrial manufacturing and other things. When that happens, and financial services, when that happens, it's going to, again, propel the world further towards universal income.
Yep.
That is what the one consequence is going to be, because the jobs aren't going to be there. These people are doing themselves out of jobs. Second, it's going to drive inflation up. This expanding the money supply, so you're paying people more money. Well, a hamburger's $10. No, now it's $12.
Yeah.
People are going to spend less. I worked for a union. I worked for a railway in the union, and we had 3 people train crews. And we used to have what we called quits. There'd be 2 guys doing the job of 3. Whose turn is it to have a quit today? This is in the yard jobs. And the company knew it and said nothing and did nothing. And we thought it was great. But then the job evaluators came. And then the job evaluators said, you can do this with 2 jobs. Here's the film. You want to see? And they abolished all of these jobs.
Hmm.
These people are being lured. They think they're getting something. There's only 2 people will give you something for nothing. God will give you salvation for nothing, buy without price, and maybe a relative or a really, really good friend. But don't look for anybody else to give you anything, especially not a politician.
Yeah.
What do you think, David?
Well, we had this conversation a couple of years ago, and the number was $15 an hour.
Yeah.
And that all came in, and they found out that people would take their business, move across the city line so they wouldn't have to pay it. So jobs shut down in a city and opened up in a suburb. So things will move around like that. Companies will go out of business, and inflation, like Jacob said, is going to go up. But the original, if you remember, the $15 an hour was that got you just over for an individual person where you would have to buy your Obamacare. You didn't get it for free. And so that was a good thing. And then also the union came in to organize these fast food workers. So they were getting a cut of that $15 an hour. So the government was getting money, the unions were getting money, and as usual, the ones on the bottom were being taken advantage. But they don't see it now. It's $20 an hour. The jobs are going to just go away quicker because Foxconn has made a hamburger can make 600 burgers a la carte an hour. You can program it to do 25% buffalo and 75% ground beef, and it'll come out cooked perfectly, have lettuce, everything, fold it up, put on a tray, pick up it's got your name on the bag. And all you need is somebody just to make sure the supplies get in there. But I'm sure they can make a machine that will do the same thing eventually. So this artificial intelligence, general intelligence that's coming is beyond what we can even do. It's going to transform software industry, service industry. This is and it's coming fast. I believe it's going to come faster than most people realize, because the efficiency that all these jobs will have, especially in the software and the service industry and all this, people will be obsolete. Jacob talked about even in trading and money and trading and finances. You won't need all these jobs. The machines can trade hundreds of thousands of times a minute and make small amounts of money, and before people even know to make a decision on buying this or buying that,
Yeah,
So
a lot of trading stocks and the trading of cryptocurrency is done by AI robots anyway. So the implication of UBI, and of course in the form of CBDC, which is one step closer to what we've been warning about and talking about Revelation 13. So you got robot waiters, robot basically making burgers, making lattes, making coffee, driving trucks, self-driving trucks. It is a future that even the EU has come out and said, you know what, we need a digital ID. You know why? Because this digital ID is going to tell us online who's artificial intelligence and who's a real person. Because and that's part of that was the WorldCoin idea, to have an ID in a database where you can tell the difference between who's a human and who's not, and all the implications in between of humanoids. And it's too big of a subject to talk about in the next few minutes. But the idea, of course, of humans that are, if they want to have humans that are born without natural parents, if they're born in a lab, are those humans, and they have the same rights? And you have transhumanists who want to bring this artificial intelligence into humanity. It is I don't know when the Lord's going to intervene, Jacob, but it's going very, very fast, as David Lister said. So we're going to stop there because we got a bunch of questions.
One other thing, Marco, we know where it's going to stop. Revelation 13, a robot.
Yeah, absolutely. It is the road to the mark of the beast, and that's the ultimate stop. But where is this going to go in the short term? It is going to be a very, very difficult experience when it comes to economy. When it comes to the comforts of the Western world, it is going to change rather quickly. And you know what the old saying, but it's a terrible saying, but it's the old saying, when the first world has economic problems, the third world starves. So the first world has issues, the third world starves. So it is no laughing matter, no joking matter to say that brothers and sisters who live in other countries are going to be affected. In fact, maybe more than other believers. So yes. There's need for prayer. There's need for continuing missions and need support to believers who are persecuted. And we'll talk more about that on Backstage. So we thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for being here with us live. We're not going to be on YouTube and on Facebook live for the next section called Backstage. So you need to jump over to Rumble, Memorial.tv, memorialtv.org. Find us there. Jacob's be talking about Newsom and some of his shenanigans that have been going on for a while.
Yes. And it is Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, as they call it.
Sure, yeah. And he's using God's word to justify his sin. So that's interesting.
Yes.
So let's come back to that. God bless you guys. We'll see you on Backstage.
Justifying a sin. That would be sort of like an Antichrist, right?
Pretty much. And he wants to be president. So we'll wait for Jim to give us the thumbs up before we get into Backstage.
Hello, and thank you for watching Memorial TV. There are so many things that are happening at Memorial Ministries worldwide, from the Philippines to Japan, to India to Africa, and back to Europe and the United States. So many of our brothers and sisters are spreading the good news of Jesus Christ to this lost world. We are so thankful for your prayers. God has been faithful and has blessed us in so many ways. If you'd like to partner with our efforts abroad and at home, please take a moment to click the link in the description and help us as the Lord leads you. Thank you very much, and God bless.